The 134th year of North Carolina baseball. We'll let Coach have opening statement, and we'll take questions. And once he's done, we will have Vance Honeycutt, Alberto Osuna, and Jake Knapp at the mic. And then we'll have some one-on-ones for those of you who requested one-on-ones afterwards. Mike, let's go.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Great. Good. Yeah. Exciting time, obviously. Our official team practice starts tomorrow, but you know, we've been in small groups, and when the NCAA changed it where we could have more than 4 out there at a time, you can still have a lot of practice, you just can't practice as long. So the exciting thing for us with team is we can get into our 20-hour weeks, utilize the time a little more and get more done. But this is an older group, a great mix, a very talented freshman class as well with the transfers and some guys that came back, and everybody worked over the break. They look great. So far so good. It's been a great, I guess, we started classes January the 10th, however many days that is. And we'll start back at it. We're off today, and we'll get back at it tomorrow and scrimmage as much as we can. And the good old NCAA decides to give us 3 weeks of team before we start. So we got to try to cram in as much as we can. But it's an exciting group. I'm excited for them. And you get to a point where, you know, you're ready to play somebody else. So I just have to keep these guys healthy and keep them plugging and keep them getting better.
We talk a lot about chemistry, especially in basketball, because there's a small group. But can you sort of talk about the chemistry building with the new guys you mentioned? This transfer era has rosters shifting so much. How has that process been since you guys got together, I guess, last fall?
Yeah, it is a process, some quicker than others. I feel like the maturity of the incoming guys, you know, helped. They've been in college, they know how to manage themselves. So really, for me, the chemistry was more with the freshman class, you know, getting them used to our culture and our standards. The other guys pretty much know what it's like to be in college. But that word, you know, we actually talked about chemistry yesterday. And I was just telling the guys that word, you have to understand what that word really, really means to have good chemistry, because everybody's not always going to be best friends, especially in any locker room. So true chemistry is throughout the course of a season, everybody keeps the same common goal, and that is the team comes first and us winning comes first. And that can be a challenge. Obviously, the more talent you have, the harder it is to get on the field. But so far, it's been great. We have great leadership. First time we have named captains, or I have named captains as a head coach, Jackson Vanderbrake and Jake Knapp. We'll have the C on their chest, and they deserve it. The players voted as well, but ultimately we made the decision as coaches. But we feel great about our leadership, but you don't truly find out how good your team chemistry is until you get rolling into that season, and probably until you have a little bit of adversity.
How are you doing health-wise as far as Vance with the back and Alberto with the hem aid?
Yeah, Alberto's great. Vance is 100%. They're both 100% ready to go. So far, so good. You know, we've had some nicks and some bruises, you know, but so far we're healthy, and hopefully it'll stay that way.
Why did you decide to make the change and name captains this year?
You know, I've been thinking about it since I've been a head coach. I've always thought that might be something I want to do, but we had not done it. We had leaders, obviously, and you pretty much had captains, but they weren't really named captains. And we do let our players, you know, have some input. And it was one of the first times since I've been a head coach, or really a coach in general, that it was this much of a landslide with those two guys. But again, you know, I also was a player, and there's a difference between being 18, you know, to 23 than there is to be a little bit older. But we also felt the same. Me, Coach Gaines, Coach Wierzbicki, Coach Howell, and now Brandon Riley, who's coaching with us, as well as the rest of our staff. We felt like they deserved it. And I met with those two guys and wanted to make sure they understood what that responsibility is, and they have to understand that when you're in that role, you know, you're not always the most well liked at times, but you should be the most respected.
You also have a lot of talented arms this year, but a lot of them are quite young and inexperienced at the college level. What is this time now like, kind of trying to get them up to speed to pitch significant innings in college baseball?
Yeah, I mean, you know, talent is talent. And when you know it, you see it, or when you see it, you know it. these guys are ultra talented freshman class of arms. And really, it's a matter if they're throwing, well enough in the preseason and they earn it, you just throw them in the fire because you don't really know until they're out there. But they do remind me a lot of these, the big horses that we've had here in the past. Again, they haven't done it in real games, but I expect them to do it in real games. So it's an excitement for sure, and our guys see it. And they have another really talented freshman catcher that's going to be catching them. So for me, it's going to be fun to watch them grow. There'll be some ups and downs, but we do feel like we return some older arms that if we can get them in the right roles, they can all work together to hopefully help our team.
Is this the best group of newcomers you've brought in?
Oh man, we've had some good ones. It's a talented group, and obviously the transfers. You're not sure. You actually see probably the high school kids more than you see the transfers, and the transfers have been phenomenal. Every single one of them. So they've got a chance to help us as well. So if you combine them two now with the era of the transfer portal, since I've been the head coach, it's definitely probably the deepest and most talented group. But since I've been coaching at UNC, they're going to have to go out there and do it. One class, I believe, was ranked like 26, but then later they re-ranked that class that had Emmanuel, Calmer, and some others, and it was ranked 1. So I always tell the coaches, these rankings are great, but the re-rankings are what's most important when it comes to recruiting. What are they going to do during their time at UNC?
Scott, what is the road back for Vance look like? And it was obviously such a disappointing thing at the end of last year. Like, what sort of, energy or spirit have you seen from him just running around out there?
Yeah, it's funny you said that because Matt Horvath's in town. He's here training, getting ready for pro ball. And we just got talking the other day, back to back. Now his was later, but he has the appendicitis and he's out against Arkansas.
Good point, yeah.
And then Vance last year, we sweep NC State, and I felt like we were gaining some momentum. And you can't make excuses. You still got our guys still battled. They made a run in the AC tournament. Clemson was hot and beat us, but our guys know, that was a blow. And number one, to get them back, has been awesome for our guys. He's the best center fielder in the country. He's a game changer defensively. Obviously, you guys know what he can do offensively. But it's been a process because when you have an injury like that, my big thing the whole time with Vance is why rush? There's no reason to rush. So we probably even took it a little bit slower, but he played that last game 100% against Liberty, I believe, in the fall. And he has felt great, and it's healed. As a matter of fact, it's amazing to see because he doesn't do as much heavy lifting. He does way more core stuff, but he looks like he's been lifting heavy, because he's as strong as he's ever been. So we've learned a little something from that as well. Like, hey, let's make sure we keep this baseball strength and try to stay healthy. His was a little bit of a freak accident, with that lower back, but he's been great and he's healthy. And he's the type of kid too that I'm just got to say, hey man, you're not hitting today, because he wants to live back there in the cages. I'm like, hey, let's keep an eye on that thing and don't let it, be aggravated again. But it shouldn't be. He's healthy.
Scott, just to follow up on that real quick. Was that sort of like an overuse injury? I'm assuming you don't have surgery on something like that.
A really good high school quarterback. He ran the ball a lot. He plays like he plays. And, the research we found is that injury has happened quite a bit with dynamic, fast center fielders. So he was able to get some really good professional help too to get it better and make some comparisons and some comps. I don't know, if it was one jump into the wall or one slide. We just noticed against NC State the last day that he was jogging. I noticed he was jogging really tenderly out to center field. And then we just said, well, let's just get it checked out. And we kind of held him out. And then, once we got the scan showed what it showed. And, I'm thankful that we got all that and he didn't try to go because he wanted to play, obviously. And I don't think I've taken him out, but maybe one game, maybe two. And I hope not take him out of any this year.
Scott, you mentioned the newcomers, a lot of them between the transfer portal and the freshmen. Do you think that is just a function of where we are now in college sports and that's going to be a yearly thing, or is it just unique to this roster this season?
Well, you should have a plan.
Yeah.
And I think every team and program should have a plan on what they're trying to do, what needs they're trying to address. I still believe strongly in the bulk of your pitching needs to come from freshmen. If you can get a transfer, you're gonna try, obviously. You wanna get an established guy most of the time that started. But there aren't many, Paul Skeens that go on the portal every single year. And then if they are, you guys know what the landscape is. I don't have to say it. It's just not easy to land those guys. But I do think with the landscape, it's gonna happen more. However, the fifth years are about to go away. So that's I always say we're all gonna go back to having to recruit a little bit more. When you have a fifth-year guy, it's a one-year guy. If you miss, and he's 1 year. And now with the NCAA rules, if you go out and get a transfer and he plays freshman year, and he comes to your place your sophomore year, you don't need to miss. But if you can find an established transfer that mixes well with your group, and we just felt like with this group, with what we were losing positionally, we needed some impact bats and athletes. But we felt really good about our incoming catcher. We felt really good about the high school position players that we had, but we didn't commit many for a reason. Obviously, we lost Walker Jenkins. But the arms, and you had to have a little bit of luck this year. You look at all these classes we've had, we landed Barden Miller, Alex White, Matt Harvey, Dustin Ackley, Kyle Seeger. All those guys could have signed professionally out of high school. And then are they going to make it here? Are they going to enroll? And we had a class 1 year in 14 that was like Jack Flaherty and Mitch Keller and all these guys, and they all signed. And if you can hold on to a group, you got a chance to be really good, especially on the mound. And we all know that to get to that 45, 50 win mark, you got to pitch it.
I thought I heard you say that there were freshmen who turned down a good bit of money to come to college. Who specifically were you speaking of?
A lot of them. Yeah, I'm not gonna, I can tell you, I lost some years those 3 days during the draft. They were all here in summer school, and that's the great thing about UNC and our school supporting us and bringing these guys for summer school, because they fall all over the place. I mean, who wouldn't? And that makes it a little harder on them to sign. Even a guy like Walker was here in summer school going every single day, and he wasn't going to sign unless what happened, and it just happened. But the other guys, some clubs made some hard runs at them. And luckily for us, what they told us was true, and they said they're not going to budge unless it's a certain amount. And that I'm thankful they didn't get that amount, because I think they're going to get that amount when they leave here. And they're also, you have to get the right kid that cares about being at UNC, the degree. Leaving here after 3 years, I'm going to be more prepared for life in general than I am if I sign out of high school.
You talked about Luke Stevenson a couple of times now, and just mentioned him in passing. What does he bring behind the dish that's maybe a little bit different than what Tomas did in his time?
Yeah, obviously we're going to miss Tomas, a fiery leader. On some really good teams for us. Luke is a different player. He's just a bigger, more physical kid, left-handed hitter. Just naturally more powerful than Tomas. And he's played at the elite level, just like Tomas did. So he's coming in here. I felt like Frick would be able to handle our pitchers pretty well, because he traveled and played at a high level. Same thing Luke did. But you don't see many kids at Luke's age just that gifted naturally with his arm, with his receiving ability. Usually it's like, man, this kid can really hit, but he's okay behind the plate, or he's lights out behind the plate like a Jacob Stallings was, but it's going to take him a little while to hit. And he runs the show, which is impressive. Like when you go watch Luke Stevenson, he's going to talk. If anything, I'll have to tell him to not talk, but I don't want to tell him that, because that's what you want from our catcher. He'll have energy. He's got a good arm. So I'm excited to watch him. He's not going to be perfect, but he reminds me like the Inetas, the Fedoroviches, those type of kids that can handle the ACC as a freshman. It doesn't mean he's going to be first team All ACC or the freshman rookie of the year, but he could as well, because he's that talented.
Coach, how important is it going to be for Luke having Parker Haskin behind him as like a mentor?
Yep.
You bring him in, he's been playing at UNC for 4 years. What is that role going to be for him?
Yeah, the neatest thing now with the technology and the advancement of everything in baseball is you can figure out if a catcher can really receive. And Haskin was one of the top in the country at stealing strikes. So when we're looking at all these guys on the transfer portal, we're if we know what we're looking for a guy that, hopefully Luke makes it, but if Luke doesn't make it to campus and signs professionally, can this guy run our staff? And we felt like that about Parker. He's an unbelievable receiver, doesn't have the arm Luke does, but he's a smart player, phenomenal teammate, another left-handed hitter, 4 years of college experience, and he is the right type of guy to be with Luke, and he makes Luke work because he's good. And Luke knows, like, yeah, like I may be the starter, but I've got to play well because this kid's good too. And if we need to give Luke a day, we're not going to miss a beat. You know, the arm strength's not the same, but man, he is as good a receiver as we've had here in a long time, and he's an awesome kid.
You guys have made the NCAA tournament, I think, the last 6 years and all of your years here. What do you think, is that like the floor of expectations? What are your expectations this season?
I mean, honestly, I think about the times we didn't make it to Omaha, to be honest with you. You know, that it's just kind of I guess it's a blessing and a curse because it's great to be able to make the postseason, but I think about like we should have went in 19 and we should have went in 22. 2 times we're hosting super regionals, so those eat at you. But yeah, I mean, a regional for us is something that we expect to be in. And honestly, we hope to be hosting a regional. That's something that we feel like our program, the level we've got to, if you do your research, the last 20, 25 years, we've hosted a lot of them. We did win our first super regional, getting to Omaha at Alabama, so sometimes you have to do that. Virginia won their national championship in 2015 on the road in the regional and the super regional. But, you know, that is something like, for us, like, we don't really talk about making a regional. That's a given that obviously you got to make a regional to win a national championship. But we just talk about what our expectations are, and they haven't changed since I've been here with Coach Fox, and this is to be the first team at UNC to win the national championship. So that's our ultimate goal.
Coach,
Can you-
around this time last year, you talked about that you had a talented yet unproven pitching staff. Do you think that rings true for this year? And then what do those guys, especially the young ones, need to do to prove themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it is talented, and I would agree somewhat unproven. We do return a lot of guys. We don't lose the amount of innings that we lost the year before. We honestly thought Brandon Schaefer was going to be back here last year. At the last minute, he signed. And I understand that every kid wants to play professional baseball, but we felt like he was going to come back and throw. He threw 96 innings, I think. I think we thought he might throw 120 because he'd be a year better, a year more experienced. And there's a kid that took the ball for 1 day's rest and won a regional for us. But until you go out there and do it on a consistent basis, it is a little bit unproven. But I also feel like we have some guys that have shown that they can pitch at this level, and they got thrown in the fire, and they got thrown in really tough situations because our starters didn't go extremely deep. So we return guys, like Knapp and Peterson and Pence and Poston, Pageant, Matthias, Percival, and they've all improved. One reason that they've improved is because they're good kids and they work. But when you get here in the fall and you see the talent level that just came in, you realize you better improve, or you're not going to have any chance to pitch. So, I would say that's an accurate description. But I'm looking forward to seeing these guys. When you're a freshman, you're going to have some ups and downs, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it that Dustin Ackley, we started when he was a freshman. Kyle Seager, we started as a freshman. If they're talented enough, you throw them out there and let them learn on the go.
Scott,
With Jake Knapp, you've kind of talked about him taking that workhorse Friday guy starter role. How have you seen him evolve? Because he went from JUCO and now he's
Yeah, he actually went to Wilmington. He says he wasn't good enough at Wilmington, I guess. Went to a JUCO, and just a definition of a worker that has made himself into a really good pitcher, great leader. And I still think he's got more upside. I think his best pitching is ahead of him. So really for our staff, it's just his presence, and he's done a phenomenal job with that group of really talented pitchers. He was around them this summer. He made a point to be around them this summer, and just make them understand of how we do things here and what the expectations are. Obviously he's good and he's talented, but there's a lot more to Jake Knapp than just that.
Scott, could you go position by position? I know center field is obvious, but who do you expect to start, or who's favored to start at each position?
Yeah, I mean, sure, I don't mind doing that at all. Luke will be behind the plate with Haskin backing him up. I'm not sure right now who would play first base. Potentially Parks Harbor if he's not playing third base. Casey Cook has also made a transition to playing second base, so he could be at second base and Vanderbrake at third, but Vanderbrake could also be at second. And then we have a freshman who's really talented who's in the mix and is fighting to get in that 9, and Gavin Gallagher. And if he's in, he would play second base, Vanderbrake would play third, Madera would play short, D'Onofrio right, and Casey Cook back in left. Casey Cook is playing second base. Patrick Alvarez looks extremely good. Patty, you know, the 5th-year guy, as strong as he's ever been, extremely hard to pitch to. Alberto Osuna looks phenomenal. He looks as good, if not better, probably better than he did 2 years ago. He lost some weight in a good way. He's as strong as he's ever been, but he's balancing, and Coach Weir just spent a lot of time. We can also play him at first. He's worked hard to give us that option. But if we played today, it would either, you know, I really believe we would probably go Vanderbrake at third, Madera at short, Cook at second, Harbor at first, Luke catch, D'Onofrio in right, Honeycutt in center, Patrick Alvarez in left, and DH Osuna. But we got 3 weeks to go, and Patrick Alvarez, you know, obviously he's in there now, but Gavin, Hunter Stokely's back, Johnny Castagnazzi's back, Colby Wilkerson's back, and they played well, and they're going to make a huge impact. You know, so you're going to see some different lineups, but I feel pretty strong that those 8 guys, you know, Osuna, Stevenson, Harbor, Cook, Madera, Vanderbrake, Honeycutt, and D'Onofrio, they're going to be in there as of right now. And so that spot for that 9 hole is a real battle.
Scott, I know you said the preseason rankings are pretty much meaningless in the end, but when you look at the preseason polls, there's a lot of teams from North and South Carolina, the entire Big Four in the ACC plus ECU, then Clemson, South Carolina, and Coastal. I mean, does it seem like the talent in this region is as good as it's ever been?
Yeah, you know, I don't look into it quite as much as I used to, but I do look at different lineups and just kind of say, okay, because I have an idea of what each team has, because I've seen these kids play, or I know where they're transferring in from. The portal makes a difference too. You know, who gets lucky and hits it with that. But the talent is, I think college baseball is harder than ever now to go. You're not going to see many teams go to Omaha 4 or 5 years in a row, because you're going to run into somebody in a regional that's a 4 seed that's really good, or a 3 seed that's really good. And if you have an off day, you're going to lose. You know, back then I think you could just out talent people. It's a little harder to do that because teams are getting guys from the transfer portal. The draft is shortened. More guys are going back for their senior years. You know, I was looking at Northeastern's lineup the other day, for instance. That's a good team, and that's like a top 25 team in my opinion. And a lot of them are older. You know, you go around the diamond. If you're putting a lot of 21s to 22s, 23s, you know, those guys are going to be pretty physical and pretty experienced. But man, the area is phenomenal. I think it's awesome. But again, they're preseason, so we'll see where everybody is, you know, as we move along throughout the season.
Caleb Cost, is he going to go to spring football, or is he going to help you, or both?
You know, Caleb, first and foremost, is an awesome kid. Like, he is all in. He's working his tail off. He had a little setback. I think I'm allowed to say this. He got mono. I don't know if I said it or not, but I just said it.
You can say whatever you want.
Yes.
You're the man.
But he's been cleared to get back down here with us today. He was with us every day, and we're working with football. I don't think he's going to have to miss much baseball. You know, he'll have some obligations with football because he's a heck of a player, but he's ultra talented here too. And that stunk that he got mono because he hadn't been able to face the live pitching like everybody else. But at the end of the day, he stole 80 plus bases. So the next couple of days before he can, as much as I can, the main thing is going to be getting him ready to pitch run for us, you know, to play left field, and then hopefully the at-bats can catch up. It's just a matter of him getting them.
Scott, how does that look sharing him with Mac? Like, how does his schedule, when does he get to pop
I mean,
over?
you gotta talk to, Carter does it for me, thank goodness. But you gotta talk to compliance, you gotta make sure we're right on the hours, you gotta make sure you're right on the off days. But they've been phenomenal, and that was part of the, you know, again, you have to have a plan.
Right.
It was important to Caleb that he wanted to play both. So Coach Brown and I sat down together, and when we recruited him, we told him that's what we would allow him to do. And they've been great. I mean, he's even doing his lifting with us, so they trust Coach Gatz in our lifting program. He's got some film sessions he has to go to. I think it's cool because, you know, we get an insight of what the football side is like, and we can ask him all the questions about football and who's good, who's not good, and all that good stuff. Because we're all Tar Heels, you know, we want to be good in every sport.
Earlier, you discussed technology. Can you talk about what a pitching lab entails and what a competitive advantage that is for teams that have them versus teams that don't have them?
Well, first of all, we didn't name it a pitching lab, so you have to guess what we've named it. It's temporary, but we think we might stick with it. It's abbreviated TCS, right, Nat?
Yes, sir.
TCS. Y'all have to figure that out. But to answer your question, here's a great example. I walk in the office today, Coach Howell, who is in charge, and now Coach Howell only works with the pitchers. Coach Howell was a phenomenal pitcher here for us. I coached him way back in the Coastal Plain League. He was a pitching coach at Wilmington, pitching coach at Georgia Tech. And we just felt like with everything in the advancement of technology and analytics, we really needed two people with our pitching staff so they can balance each other and one person can really be in charge of that side of it. And that's what Jason did this summer. He traveled around, and we just tried to figure out, okay, what's the best route for us to help our guys improve the most. You don't want it just to have it. You want it so it'll help you win games, help these guys get better. And we feel like we've got one of the best, if not the best, new indoor facilities in the country. Now, we had a lot of help from donors that helped us do it as well, but we redid the whole indoor. If you guys walk through on the back side, if you want a video a little bit, Carter could show you. It's got a divider where it's pitching specific. There's still a couple things we've got to add in there. But I walked in this morning and Coach Howell was like, Connor Bover. And I'm like, he's like, there you go, force plates. And I'm like, I mean, I was a pitching coach for 10 years. I just gave him the ball and we threw it. I mean, you know, it's changed quite a bit. We had some bands. I don't even know if they were called yet. But now that being said, if you get a bunch of Andrew Millers and Bards and Whites, you know, but it still can help because your goal is how can you take the pitcher that you have, help him be the best he can be, and maybe if there are some flaws, especially in a kid's career early, that can prevent him from an injury. Injuries sometimes they happen. There's nothing you can do about them. But because of something they saw with Connor Bover throwing in our indoor, they were able to make a change. They were able to show Connor exactly what it was. Here's what we need to do to make that change. And he had been having trouble getting his velocity back up. And yesterday, he was just out there pumping 91, 93. And he was able to apply it. So the kid has to be able to apply it. But, you know, it's really phenomenal to me to be able to walk in there. We're throwing a bullpen. You have 3 TVs. You see the name who's throwing the bullpen. You see the speed. You see the location. You see the rotation. You see the induced vertical break. So I've learned more about it because I need to know about it. And then you see the slow motion cameras, the one right over top. You see the release point. If a guy's getting beside the ball, can he get more behind it? So really, it's something that was extreme. You know, we needed it, and our plans were maybe to wait and build a developmental center in left, but we couldn't wait. You know, and I recognized like we got to do something immediately. And rarely do you have a vision that it actually turns out exactly like you want it to. But so far, you know, we're waiting on the rest of our hitting technology to come in. But once that gets here, we'll be rocking and rolling 100%. And we also redid our outdoor bullpen, covered and technology, TrackMan, video. The only difference in the indoors, we have the force plate mound, which kind of measures your force and are you directing all your force where it needs to be directed. How did I do with that now?
Great job.
Great, thanks.
Coach, how much do you personally like relying on the numbers? Because you have analytics for everything, but when you're in a 7th inning kind of emergency situation, how much do you look at the numbers and how much of it is just gut instinct?
I think you definitely need to pay attention to the numbers, but you also need to pay attention to your instinct. And you need to understand and trust. The advice I got was, you know, trust your gut and be yourself. And when I sat down with someone like Coach Williams, and I have been coaching long enough to know that Robert Woodard's not going to look good back there on those numbers. But Robert Woodard's going to win. And when you cross the white line, you know, what is your competitiveness like? You know, what is your heartbeat like in the bigger situations? Can you control it when the batter's in there like you do back there without a batter? So I still think the human element is above the analytics. And, you know, I have a lot of friends in professional baseball and they feel like the teams that are keeping that first still have been the most successful from the standpoint of letting the manager ultimately make the decision. You know, like you look at the Atlanta Braves, they've got all the technology, but they don't hand him a lineup, but some coaches get handed a lineup. But I also think some coaches are closed-minded, and they're like, oh, you know, if you can have something that can help you be better, or help our guys be better, I think you should pay attention to it, learn how to use it, which we try to do here. But I'm not gonna make a pitching change because a guy has more induced vertical break than the other guy. I'm gonna, most of the time, go to the guy that can throw the ball where he wants to and has an off-speed pitch that he can locate, and he's tough.
That's one for Coach.
Coach, you've never made too much of kind of the lead-off hitter label. You got a lot of guys on this team who kind of fit that stereotype at a really high level. How does that, just combined with the number of left-hand options that you guys have, just kind of add to sort of the fun lineups you can put together this year?
That's a great question, because we were trying to figure out today who we would lead off if we played today. And really right now, we feel like the three that we would consider would be Madera, D'Onofrio, or Honeycutt. All three different type guys. So we're gonna have to look at that. There's a part of me that's extremely intrigued to have two guys, 1-2, that are both capable of hitting 20 home runs. Or do you put Madera up there to be more potentially like a Zarate or a Chad Frank, to try to set the table for the other guys behind him? I say all that, and the next thing you know, Casey Cook will be leading off for us like Reed Frump did in 2007. So you really don't know. I mean, heck, in 2019, we started leading off Michael Bush and hitting Sabato behind him. So that could change throughout the season, but I do feel like it's going to be a tough decision from the standpoint of, you know, that's where we might look more at these numbers and be like, okay, you know, who's going to give us the best chance to score the most runs?
Thank you, Coach.
I'm good, Coach, if you want to